In other words, if a man just wants sex, he's going to get it someplace.
Yep.
Okay, he'll find somebody to give it to him. But if he wants you, if that's what his taste is for, then he has to wait if you make him wait. And then that refines him, that matures him, and makes him, how can I say it, a more responsible person. Because now he's having to say no to his flesh. Okay, and getting married doesn't mean you never say no to your flesh.
Right.
It's what faithfulness is all about. How am I going to be faithful to one woman if I don't know how to say no to my flesh? Hey, Angela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good. Thanks for joining us today.
I am excited to be here.
Yeah, I guess I said something a few weeks ago that provoked a couple questions in your heart, and so let's talk about it.
I like that. So you did. Episode 8, titled How Covenant Will Save the Family in Crisis. You mentioned, and so first I want to start by saying I know your heart.
Okay.
I know your heart for God, the church, family, children, men, women, especially women. I know your heart for us daughters.
Yeah, thank you.
But in seeing such a 20-minute clip, the conversation around that 20 minutes may not have been exposed to people who don't know this house.
Okay.
And so
Good.
the clarity from those questions and those statements are also for those who may have only saw a 20-minute clip
Right.
of your heart versus the big picture.
Right.
So one of the statements you made, and this is also all around maturity, pursuit, withholding sex, covenant, marriage, etc., and the marriage problem. I remember you mentioning the marriage problem. You, in paraphrasing, you mentioned women are usually frustrated with you because you don't address some of these things with men.
Right.
And in asking why, your response was because men are immature. And part of their growth and maturity is gained in pursuit or in relationship with a woman.
Right.
And that if this man desires the woman, it forces him to grow up and mature.
Right.
And so my questions, three things that came to me about that sentence, that topic was, as young women and us taking some of your materials and teaching it to youth and being able to kind of layman's terms things for these younger minds, one of the things that a young woman may have walked away with that statement was, a woman must guard herself to provoke a man to maturity.
Okay.
So that's one thing that was pulled out of that statement. And a man's growth in this scenario is reactive and not proactive, based on what a woman withholds. And the third thing was women are cast as gatekeepers of holiness rather than a man, the initiator of righteousness.
Right.
And so I wondered if that particular podcast was talking about treating the symptom versus the problem.
Right. Right. That's a really good question. And what I'm doing when I approach it that way is trying to be in reality for women.
Okay.
Okay. God gives women the power of sex, and he gives men the power of marriage. Okay. And so it all boils down to, what do you want? If that makes sense. And so society, the strategy for society is to devalue women and to devalue what they have, and the need for them to know that they have something very valuable as far as sex is concerned. Okay. And so the man's sex drive is such that I don't know how much teaching you can do and to keep him, to have him calm that down himself,
Sure.
to keep the pursuit off, if that makes sense. If a man is really being a man, okay, his assignment in the garden was to cultivate, okay, to keep the garden, protect it, okay, the guard, govern, okay? And so if he's doing his job, he's protecting the honor of a woman. He's not using her,
Okay,
if that
that's
makes
good.
sense,
Yes.
okay? And so if you get a man that understands that, okay, he won't push the sex issue, especially if he understands it's a value of yours also,
Sure.
okay? But most of the times that's not the case right now.
Right.
Okay, and so until men get it, what do? Okay, a woman has so much more at stake in the sexual relationship than a man. Okay, and,
Yes.
and she has a lot more to lose. And so when I'm looking at my sons and when I'm looking at my daughters, I try to raise them with the same values, but I'm much more protective of my daughters because I got to help raise that kid that man abandons. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I never wanted to see my daughters have to struggle as single moms. Okay, I was a single dad for about 8 years, okay? And that's not even close to what women go through because I had enough money. I had control of my own schedule. You know, I could run them to the school. I could do whatever I wanted to. There was nobody telling me what to do during that time. And most women don't have that situation. Most of them have a tight financial situation and a job situation where they have to report to a man who has somebody at home taking care of his kids, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And so he's not always gracious about the demands of family as opposed to job, all right?
Okay.
And so I've never wanted to see, I don't want to see women struggle, okay? And so I put a lot more protective pressure on the women, okay, to protect what they have because, you know, there's a high chance you're going to run into a man who wants that from you. Okay, and who's going to make it an issue with you? And so, if you don't know the power that has as far as your uniqueness is concerned, in other words, if a man just wants sex, he's going to get it someplace.
Yep.
Okay, he'll find somebody to give it to him. But if he wants you, if that's what his taste is for, then he has to wait. If you make him wait. And then that refines him, that matures him, and makes him, how can I say it, a more responsible person, because now he's having to say no to his flesh. Okay, and getting married doesn't mean you never say no to your flesh.
Right.
It's what faithfulness is all about. How am I going to be faithful to one woman if I don't know how to say no to my flesh? And so the pursuit of a woman who is celibate teaches the man how to say no to his flesh. Okay, maturity. When I talk about maturity, a big part of maturity is being happy when you're not getting your way. Okay. If you notice, kids break down. They'll be little angels until you say no to them. Then they turn into these beasts. Just because they didn't get their way. And so a big part of maturity and growing up in life is how to be joyful, how to be peaceful, how to be kind when you're not getting your way.
Sure.
Okay? Sure. And so because the sex drive is so high, I mean, God was showing out when he created the sex drive. And because that's so high, okay, it's a great lab for somebody to be able to discipline themselves and teach them how to deny yourself. Maturity in Christianity is denying yourself, is that you don't get your own way.
That's good.
God is really good. He's always given me everything I wanted except my way.
Yeah.
He doesn't give me my way. I don't get to call the shots. And so being happy in him is related to my ability to manage not getting my way.
Okay.
Waiting, being patient, being kind, loving when the temptation is to hurt, is to hate. Giving when the temptation is to be stingy.
Sure.
Okay, confessing the word, having hope when the temptation is to give up.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's just the way the cross is. That's the nature of the cross, is that I don't get my way. Okay, that I have to bear my cross, and so in that sense, it matures a man to not get what he wants. Okay, so women have to understand the power of that they have as far as sex is concerned. It's really powerful, and that power is found in your uniqueness.
Okay,
if that makes sense. Okay, if a person just has just a lust, okay, then lust is never satisfied.
Right.
The nature of lust is that it's never satisfied, and so if a man is lusting you, giving him what he wants is not going to do the trick because he's going to want something else.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's where that is. And so we teach the men, we try to teach the men to be responsible, to cultivate, to protect women. Okay, and I try to give people comebacks. What if a woman comes on to you? Well, then tell her, say, sister, I'm not going to take advantage of you just because you don't know your value.
That's good.
And you may only meet one man in your life who didn't take advantage of you, who didn't use you and spoke life into you and spoke to your value, and I'm going to be that man.
That's good.
If that makes sense.
Yes. You touched on just a part that I was going to ask you about in regards to. So in that statement, if a group of young men were watching that podcast and they were left thinking that their maturity was dependent upon the boundaries that a woman sets, or withholding sex, or that their leadership and growth is initiated by her drawing a line first, what would your advice be to those young men?
Well, they have to look at it through the lens of a man. Okay, maturity. How can I say it? Maturity is not measured by age. It's measured by the acceptance of responsibility. Okay. And so if I come into your life, I'm supposed to make your life better.
Sure.
I'm not supposed to leave you all messed up and broken and you're brokenhearted. And so my responsibility is to protect you in the relationship, to help you protect your heart, if that makes sense.
That's good.
Okay. And so if a man is mature enough to see that, then he knows the right way to lead the relationship.
Okay.
Okay. But if he doesn't, if he doesn't, then he doesn't know to protect your heart.
Right.
Okay. And in his mind, he's not thinking I'm gonna have sex with her and leave her, But there's something that lifts the burden, the drive lifts after he's had sex.
The pursuit.
And then and it's like the Popeye cartoon we used to watch. He said, "I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today." Well, I'm hungry. And so I'm sincere. When I get the money Tuesday, I'm going to pay you. But once I eat the hamburger, that's gone. You know what I'm saying? And when I get the money Tuesday, I don't have that same sincerity to drive to pay you. See what I'm saying?
Okay.
And so people are not necessarily always lying to you, okay? But they're speaking from the context of what they're feeling in that moment.
Sure.
Okay, now once I have the sex, then that feeling is satisfied. Okay, I've had this experience. Now on to the next one.
Gotcha.
If that makes sense. And
Sure.
now the other person that I haven't had now looks more attractive to me.
Okay.
Okay, because I haven't had that experience yet. That makes sense?
It does.
And so you're not responsible for maturing the man. Okay, and so what I tell young guys, I said, a woman who will have sex with you without marrying you is an assignment from hell to keep you stupid.
That's good.
Or to keep you immature, to keep you childish. Okay, because she never forces you to give up options. Okay, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay.
I love the dialogue from the male perspective because we don't get that very often.
I know. I'm going to be better at that.
I want to circle to this because with us teaching youth ministry, and I'm surrounded by young people who are in ministry school, the 25 and under. A lot of conversations that we tend to have is around how Jesus' eyes looked at the woman at the well. And so what's John 4, I believe it's in.
Yes, John 4. John chapter 4, yeah.
So he saw her history, but he didn't reduce her to her history.
Right.
And then he addressed her sin without shaming her. He offered her living water with no rejection.
Right.
And he called her into worship and purpose, and he restored honor and told her the truth. And so as young people that we're surrounded by, they're still in their purity, many of them. They have not crossed that boundaries. Outside of, we're in AI, we're in pornography. You've got these things that they've been exposed to, but they have not had the physical aspect of that. So with that being said, and teaching young men covenant and what that means, and I know you mentioned earlier that it's hard to teach a man and keep teaching a man, and this is why it's important to teach women. We want to teach young girls to keep their purity.
Because they have so much to lose.
They have so much to lose. But wouldn't that be a loss for men too, and young men, in a sense of the soul tie that they also carry and the damage that does cause to men to have body count after body count after body count. And so in teaching the men that sex is, for women, it's power, I also feel like that's kind of double in a sense of the power in which sex is in covenant. That the power lies in marriage, and
Right.
and a bed is undefiled and pure.
Right.
That the power, it could be used as a weapon later. That I will withhold from you to get what I want because
Right.
I've forced you to do something or manipulated you or coerced you into this space before using this tool.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that we're not teaching the girls that it's a powerful weapon. That even in context of marriage, I've known women to withhold.
Right.
And that's not biblical.
Nope.
And so we want to make sure it's in context for both the pure that have not taken that leap or are not married and have not had sex, and to give it layman's terms for them of what that power means versus it being a weapon
Right.
to weaponize.
Well, yeah, and most power is that way. It can be positive and negative,
Okay.
depending on how you use it. Okay, the power God gives us, the power of sex to create a closer bond and to strengthen the bond, the emotional bond between the man and the woman.
Sure.
Okay, so it's two things. It's a strengthener of the strengthening component of the relationship, and it's also a measurement component.
Okay.
Okay, you can also measure how good your relationship is by your intimacy,
That's
if
good.
that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, and so she wants to use that power, okay, to strengthen their relationship, not to control, not to manipulate.
Right.
Okay, God doesn't give us control over people. I remember wondering, I said, why would God put two trees in the garden?
Yeah.
You know, why would he give us a chance to fall? Well, he always gives you a choice. Okay, and it's in the choice that you love him. Okay, my choices exhibit love. Okay, so I love my wife by not choosing anybody but her.
Right.
And the fact that there's options gives me the opportunity to love her.
Right.
Okay, God is a God of love. He doesn't want control. He has the power and the ability to control us. Okay. And some people actually say, well, God is in control. No, he's not. You know,
Right.
he would make better choices for me.
Sure, we have free will.
There's a lot of stuff that wouldn't be happening if God was in control.
Right,
As
right.
a matter of fact, there is a place where God is in control, and if you want to know what that's like, go to heaven.
Amen.
You know, he's
That's
in control
good.
of heaven, and so
That's
earth
good.
would be much more like heaven
That's
if
right.
God had control.
That's
and so
good.
love and control cannot coexist.
Okay, that's good because
Does that
that
make
breaks
sense?
down the whole power piece. Because
Yeah.
that the concept of hearing it in that context of women have sex as power and men have marriage as power breaks it down a bit more. That it should not be used as a weapon.
Right, should be
Yeah.
and should not be used for control.
Control,
Or
right?
manipulation.
Okay.
It shouldn't be used to get somebody to do something they don't want to do.
Right.
If that makes sense.
That makes sense. That makes
and
sense.
so love and control cannot coexist. And so my desire should be to love and enhance and to see. Like I hear a lot of people talking nowadays about what does one bring to the table?
Sure.
What is who's the prize?
Who's the prize?
Okay, and that's transactional relationships. Okay, that's a transaction. You know, I'll take care of you. I'll support you. You bring this to the table. Whereas God meant for relationships to be transformational.
Yeah, that's good.
If that's making sense, okay? The love of my wife actually changes me. It makes me a different person, and it makes me a better person. Now, she's not responsible for my growth, okay? But my relationship with her causes me to grow.
Sure.
If that makes sense, okay? And so it's not so much what do you bring to the table, but who am I with you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Becomes the issue, okay?
That's good.
And so I don't want control. Okay, I want to enhance this person. I want to be considered. I want to be loved.
Right.
Okay, I don't want to be ignored. But you don't want control either, because if you control a person, you never really know who they are.
Yeah, that's
because
good.
they never really get to be who they are because you're controlling them.
Yeah.
And then when they decide one day I'm going to do what I want to do and leave you, then you're shocked.
Yeah.
Because you thought you had everything under control.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so a man's muscles, nor is a woman's sex appeal for the purpose of control.
That's good.
Okay, his muscles are there to protect the home. Okay,
that's good.
You should never need protection from him, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And so the man should never feel manipulated by sex, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
And so I wanted and from that episode, to give some clarity to some young
Right.
women.
That's good.
That is not a
That's
weapon.
necessary, yeah.
And that you only abstain in agreement to fast in
Right.
marriage and covenant.
Yeah, Bible actually says in 1 Corinthians 7 that you have power over each other's body.
Yeah.
So in
that
other
you
words,
don't
I
belong
actually
to
need
yourself.
I actually need to get permission to fast.
That's
and
good.
abstain from sex. I need to consult with my wife and say, hey, I'm going to go on a 3-day fast here, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, and she would be in agreement with that.
And
So
that's
that makes sense.
the pursuit, in a sense of the pursuit of a woman biblically, in Proverbs 18:22. That is that a man became a seeker of.
He who finds a wife.
He who finds a wife finds a good thing.
Yep.
And so, in shaping the minds of the next generation that is exposed to way more options, not just in the pursuit, but the pursuit of all different identities.
Right.
What would you advise us to teach these young people as they are thinking to pursue any relationships in regards to not just sexual relationships, but in peer connections and groups that we form in? And we have young Christian believers saying that's who they are.
Right. As far as identity.
As identity.
Yeah.
And I'm embracing that. And I stand with love in these situations.
Right. Absolutely.
But there's a blindness almost to young people that are in pursuit of relationships that are accepting things that may not be acceptable in the body of Christ.
Right. Right. Well, it all boils down to identity. And so one of the main questions we have to answer is, who am I? Okay, who am I? And in answering that question, you go to your maker. Okay, only my maker has the right to determine who I am.
Sure.
If I create something, if I invent something, I also have the right to name it, if that makes sense.
That's good.
Okay, and so I don't understand myself. I have to go to my maker to understand my purpose.
That's good.
Okay, and function determines design,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Can you break that down a little bit?
Yeah, okay. The design of something has to do with what it's meant to do.
Okay.
Okay, and so this chair was designed a certain way. It has arms, so I can rest my arms. Okay, it's very different than a lounge or a bed.
Okay.
Why? Because they have a different purpose.
Okay.
This thing would be uncomfortable to sleep in. Okay, because it's not designed for that. This mic stand has a boom on it.
Yeah.
Because it's not meant to be for me to stand in front of it. It's meant for me to sit down and the mic to come to me.
Sure.
So it has a boom stand. And so function determines design. And so the way you are designed gives you a hint at how you're supposed to function.
That's good.
Okay. Now, if you have a disagreement between how you feel and how you were designed, then you go to God for that. And you go to God and say, God, you know, you need to change how I feel so that I can cooperate with the way you designed me.
That's good.
See, to me, there's authority in design.
Sure.
Okay. That there is, how can I say it? That's why you have to be self-aware to a certain degree. You have to know how you're wired. I'm wired a certain way.
Yeah.
And I function better a certain way. So what I try to do is obey that design.
Okay.
You know, if I came in here with a bunch of notes and knew what you were going to ask me in advance, I would be reading.
Sure.
Rather than flowing.
Yeah. I like that you let me go cold turkey.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So I do better when I don't know what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And I have to be on the spot. There's another pool of information that you access when you are being spontaneous.
Yeah.
There's a whole other pool of wisdom that you can access if you're wired that way.
Yeah.
Now, some people would fall directly on their face. They would I need the questions a couple weeks in advance.
Right.
I need to prepare. I need to study. I need to look at studies, and they come with a whole different, and that's great too.
Okay.
One is not better than the other.
Sure.
They're just different, and you have to know how you're wired.
That's good.
And so I try to cooperate with my design.
That's good.
If that makes sense.
That's so good.
And so I was designed by someone. I didn't design myself. Okay. I didn't just show up.
Right.
Okay, God has all my memories written in the book. Okay.
Right.
And so he has a design for me. Now, if there's something wrong with that design, or if there's some place where I'm not congruent with my design, then I go to him for help with that.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we all have weaknesses or exaggerate, like say for instance, an exaggerated appetite. Everybody has an appetite, but an exaggerated one will make me unhealthy.
Sure.
If that makes sense. Okay, if I breathe smoke and fire as opposed to air, then that's going to affect my lungs.
Right.
Okay, so I need God. The beauty of Christianity is that is Emmanuel, God with us. I don't have to live by my own power.
Right.
Okay, so anytime I'm frustrated, anytime I'm failing, it means that I'm living by my own power. See, so I go to the designer to make the design make sense. Okay, I don't lean not to your own understanding. I don't try to figure that stuff out on my own.
Right.
Okay, if something is not working, if something's not feeling right, then I go to him about it, if that makes sense.
That does.
See, we had something when I was a kid that you guys don't have. We had tomboys.
I was called a tomboy.
Yeah, we had women who were athletic.
I was athletic. I played soccer. And,
they weren't girly girls.
Right,
like my granddaughter's a girly girl.
Oh, she is.
Yeah, she's a girly girl, okay? But everybody is not exactly the same.
Right,
See, and so there's certain people, when you don't fit a certain stereotype, they try to push you into another category.
Gotcha.
And you have to know that and not allow that to happen.
That's
and realize
good.
I just got that tomboy thing. I like jumping fences and playing softball and all that kind of stuff. See,
I had to learn that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to circle back just real quick to you saying that a man doesn't mature with age or just by age.
Maturity doesn't come with age.
Doesn't come with age.
Yeah.
And so I want to bring Paul, 1 Corinthians 13, into this when he said, I spoke like a child, I understood like a child, I thought like a child.
Right.
Then I became a man.
Right.
Like, when is that space for a young man to say, I need to put childish things away? Like, how do you teach young people who are getting ready to launch off to college or that are in that space of the 1920s so that they don't repeat some of the mistakes we've made?
Right.
That this is time to start putting childish things away.
Right. Well, how can I say this? Life is lived in levels and entered into in stages.
Okay, unpack that.
Okay. What's okay for a 3-year-old is not okay for a 13-year-old.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay, what I'm expecting from a 3-year-old, if he's on time, okay, if a kid is 15-year-old and still operating in that same space, then we say something's wrong. He's developmentally behind.
Gotcha.
Okay. And so as I get older, as a young man, as I get older, I begin to get muscles and I begin to look like a man. Okay. Well, the more I look like a man, the more people are going to expect of me.
Sure.
If that makes sense. Okay. And so, how can I say it? Childishness has a different cost for me as I get older. Okay. The poor performance in school now becomes poor performance at work. And now I'm poor because I don't know how to make it in life.
Sure.
Because I don't know how to meet deadlines. I don't know how to do what's expected of me. I don't know how to listen and do what I need to do in order to make it, if that makes sense. Okay? And so as I get older, immaturity has a greater and greater impact on me. I was driving one day and the police passed me and they had a guy back in the back seat. Obviously he's under arrest, right? Probably being transported to court or something. And the Lord spoke to me and said, that's the same guy that was in the principal's office in the 3rd grade, but he just never changed. And so the adult version of the principal's office is jail.
Wow.
Okay? And so what is not a big deal, not a really big deal when I'm young becomes a really big deal as I get older.
Sure.
And so everything is kind of based on what do you want? What kind of life do you want? If that makes sense, okay? And so destiny determines path. Where I'm going determines the path that I take. Okay? So when I leave here, I'm going to go home. So there's about 2 or 3 different ways that I can go home. But there's some ways that I can't go and go home, if that makes sense, okay? And so where do you want to wind up? And based on where you want to wind up and what you want determines the kind of decisions you make.
Gotcha.